What could have been with the 1969 Houston Astros? As a lot of you on my channel know, one of my interests in baseball is Major League Baseball, or baseball in general, in the 1960s. The golden age of baseball, at least in the aesthetic sense. And the Houston Astros, during that decade, finished over 500 one time. It was their best team of that decade. The Astros franchise debuted in 1962 as the Houston Colt 45s, moved into the Astrodome and changed their name to the Astros in 1965, moved the natural grass out of the dome and placed artificial turf, known as AstroTurf, inside of the dome in 1966. A few years later, in 1969, the Astros finished 81-81, so 500 exactly. Fifth place in the new National League West Division. San Diego Padres finished in sixth place, losing over 100 games, in fact, with a final record of 52-110. The Los Angeles Dodgers, Cincinnati Reds, San Francisco Giants, and Atlanta Braves finished ahead of the Astros. The Braves won that division, were swept by the New York Mets in the inaugural National League Championship Series, who then went on to beat the Orioles in 5 games in the 1969 World Series, stamping their title as the 1969 Miracle Mets. But could that have been a little bit different? Let's check out the 1969 Astros as they were. In their starting rotation, their ace was Larry Dierker, followed by Don Wilson, Denny LeMaster, and Tom Griffin. Not too bad. At catcher, they had Johnny Edwards. At first base, they had Kurt Blefary. At second base, they had Joe Morgan. At third base, they had Doug Rader. At shortstop, they had Dennis Menke. In left field, they had Jesus Alou. In center field, they had Jimmy Wynn. And in right field, they had Norm Miller. Some good names there. Not a bad team by any means. In the bullpen, the Astros had Jack Billingham, Wade Blasingame, Skip Gwynn, and at different points during the season, they had Dooley Womack and Jim Bouton. As Jim Bouton described in his infamous book, Ball 4, see him in an Astros uniform right there, he was traded to the Astros from the Seattle Pilots, the infamous one-year team, for Dooley Womack and a couple other guys. And the Astros closer in 1969 was Fred Gladding. He actually led the National League in saves that season. So, in and of itself, not bad. However, certainly around a 500 ball club. Clearly, they were not the best of the teams contending for the National League West title in 1969. But there were some things that went on leading up to that season that could have made that a little bit different. We'll start with an outfielder that the Astros traded away before the 69 season. A red-haired, young, strong, talented prospect named Rusty Staub. He came up during the early Colt 45 Astros days and was routinely one of the Astros' top stars. Played outfield, mainly right field. Unfortunately, he and manager Harry Walker didn't really seem to get along very well. So before the 1969 season, Astros general manager Spec Richardson decided to trade Rusty Staub. Traded Rusty Staub to the newly formed Montreal Expos. For Rusty Staub, the Expos were going to trade 2 guys they had just acquired in the expansion draft. Jesus Alou, outfielder Jesus Alou, and first baseman Don Clendenon. Jesus Alou was in the starting lineup for the Astros during 1969, but obviously Don Clendenon was not. First baseman, a veteran bat with the Pittsburgh Pirates, definitely a good player. And when the trade to Houston was first announced, he felt very good about it. He thought, well, it's closer to where I live. It should be nice to play somewhere like Houston, where they have a more talented ball club than an expansion franchise would. However, once he realized that Harry Walker was the manager of the Astros, he started having second thoughts. This was because Clendenin remembered Walker's days as the Pittsburgh Pirates third base coach in the mid-'60s and how he had some racist tendencies. He also heard the same from Jimmy Wynn and Joe Morgan, who were already on the Astros. So, Clendenin ultimately decided to refuse the trade, that he would not report to Houston. This caused an issue, and the Expos were forced to send somebody else. And they sent two relief pitchers, Jack Bellingham and Skip Gwynn. Bellingham was a good reliever, would join the starting rotation within the next couple of years. And Skip Gwynn did not pitch that much. In fact, he pitched in 1968 3 games with the Atlanta Braves. And then with the Astros in 1969, he pitched 28 games. 1971, he pitched in 4 games. And that was about it. But what if something else had happened, and Don Clendenin had been able to come to the Astros? Maybe the Astros talked with Harry Walker. What if they decided to talk with Harry Walker and say, hey, you need to cut this out? And Walker decided to leave his racism in the past and welcome a talented first baseman to the ball club, allowing for Kurt Blefary to be bench depth. And then, on top of that, remember the Astros still traded away Rusty Staub. What if there had been a way the Astros could have kept him around? Perhaps, instead of trading away Rusty Staub, when Clendenin decides, I'm not gonna report to Houston, maybe the Astros rethink the entire trade. They decide to keep Staub, and they trade away somebody else. They decide to allow the Expos possibly to keep Jesus Alou, or maybe they get Jesus Alou still. Alou and Clendenin. And you trade away possibly somebody else. I don't have it written down here, but they could trade away some other bench depth. The Astros had a little bit of that. They had Sandy Valdespino at one point during the 1969 season. Could have potentially traded away somebody like him to the Montreal Expos. This way, the Astros would still have Rusty Staub, their homegrown talent, and they'd have the new veteran in Don Clendenin. Now, they would not have Jack Bellingham and Skip Gwynn. However, the Astros did have some decent relievers without them. So, at this point, instead of Kurt Blefary at first base, you would have Don Clendenin, and instead of Norm Miller in right field, you would have Rusty Staub. But let's not remember the Astros also had another young outfielder who was up and coming at the time. He had a couple years in the big leagues by the name of Bob Watson, another young, aspiring, homegrown prospect for the Houston Astros. He could play left field. So instead of Jesus Alou, you allow him to be bench depth, and you place Bob Watson in left field. You then have a homegrown outfield of Bob Watson, Jimmy Wynn, and Rusty Staub. And your infield is Don Clendenin at first base, Joe Morgan at second base, Doug Rader at third base, and Jimmy Wynn at shortstop. And of course, you have Johnny Edwards behind the plate catching. This lineup is already better. But let's go to that starting rotation, because this is where things are going to get very interesting. So again, the Astros had Larry Dierker as their ace, Don Wilson at number 2, Mike Cuellar at number 3, Dino LeMaster at number 4, Tom Griffin at number 5. Now, I mentioned Mike Cuellar just then. That's another trade that happened. Mention Mike Cuellar. He was traded to the Baltimore Orioles in the late 60s for Curt Blefary. What if the Astros keep Cuellar? Maybe they trade Tom Griffin, another starting pitcher, for Curt Blefary. Or perhaps the trade doesn't happen at all. But let's say it does, so Blefary can be some bench depth. Dierker, Wilson, Cuellar, and LeMaster. Because in this case, now you don't have Tom Griffin anymore. The rotation is already better. You've added Mike Cuellar, a guy who won the Cy Young Award in the American League for the Baltimore Orioles in 1969. But something else the Astros had in 1969. During the draft, the Astros selected a very tall, very large pitcher, right-handed pitcher, by the name of J.R. Richard. He was drafted in 1969. He made his Major League debut in 1971. But what if there was a way that Richard could have pitched in 1969? Perhaps he is so talented that he pitches for the Astros during the stretch run. He gets up to the big leagues very, very quickly. Or perhaps the Astros strike a deal with Richard similar to the deal that Willie Mays had with the Birmingham Black Barons when he was playing for them, to where he would play with the team while he was in high school, but for only home games so that when the team's on the road, he can focus on his studies. In this case, the Astros could have signed J.R. Richard a few years earlier and have him in the starting rotation. So once again, Larry Dierker, Don Wilson, Mike Cuellar, Dino LeMaster, and J.R. Richard. In fact, you may very well have Richard over LeMaster. Dierker, Wilson, Cuellar, Richard, LeMaster. This rotation is even better now. Okay? So, that's good. But there's one more thing I can add here. In the first ever Major League Baseball draft in 1965, the Astros had the 4th overall pick. Right? The Astros selected a shortstop by the name of Alex Barrett. He never made it to the big leagues. In fact, there's not even a Wikipedia page for him. 11 rounds later, in the 1965 Major League Baseball draft, the New York Mets selected a right-handed pitcher out of Alvin High School in Alvin, Texas, by the name of Nolan Ryan. This was in the 12th round. Wow. So, what if the Astros had seen Ryan's potential and decided to select him in the first round, 4th overall, and then by the time he comes up, he's in the 1969 starting rotation. Because in 1969, he was the New York Mets closer. But what if he was either still a closer or in the starting rotation for the Astros? Likely in the starting rotation because, again, the Astros had league-leading in saves closer Fred Gladding. You don't need a closer. So, let's review the starting rotation. Ace pitcher is right-handed pitcher number 49, Larry Dierker. Second is right-handed pitcher number 40, Don Wilson. Third is left-handed pitcher number 35, Mike Cuellar. Fourth is right-handed pitcher number 30, or number 34, Nolan Ryan. And fifth, right-handed pitcher number 50, J.R. Richard. I put Ryan and Richard that low because you got to remember this is the late 60s. These two guys, Ryan and Richard, are still young. Ryan's command wasn't up to Nolan Ryan Hall of Fame quality yet, although he was still very, very good. When he was traded to the Angels from the Mets, where the umpires used the outside chest protector rather than the inside chest protector, the umpires favored the high strikes more, which Nolan Ryan, lacking command, was able to pitch more high strikes. And so he succeeded more in the American League. And he got his command down. Then later on, when he was traded back to the National League, to the Astros, he did just fine because his command was in check. So now he's with the Astros to start his Major League career. And J.R. Richard begins his a few seasons earlier. Durker, Wilson, Cuellar, Ryan, Richard. Those are all ace pitchers on the same team, in the same rotation. Only one left-handed pitcher, Mike Cuellar. But maybe that's all you need. Let's take a look at this starting lineup. Batting first, playing second base, number 8, Joe Morgan. Batting second, the right fielder, number 10, Rusty Staub. Batting third, in center field, number 24, Jimmy Wynn. Batting fourth, in left field, number 27, Bob Watson. Batting fifth, first baseman, number 17, Don Clendenin. Batting sixth, at third base, number 12, Doug Rader. Batting seventh, the shortstop, number 11, Dennis Menke. Batting eighth, the catcher, number 7, Johnny Edwards. Batting ninth, the pitcher, whoever the starting pitcher is for that day. And of course, you've got bench depth too. Jesus Alou, Kurt Blefary. At one point during that season, you had Tommy Davis and Sandy Valdespino. Now, how does this team fare? Well, remember, this team finished in 5th place out of 6 teams at just 500. This new Astros team definitely finishes over 500, and I personally say they finish over the Cincinnati Reds and then the Los Angeles Dodgers easily. You got to remember, in the stretch run in 1969, the Giants were slumping a little bit, and the Braves were heating up. But part of the reason the Braves were heating up is because they swept the Astros twice. Once in Houston, once in Atlanta. What if those series were different? I doubt those sweeps would have happened. What if the Astros win both those series? What if they sweep both those series? So maybe the Braves are easier for the Astros to take down, and the Astros finish ahead of the Braves. And if you finish ahead of the Braves, you definitely finish ahead of the Giants, because the Giants finish behind the Braves. So then the Astros win the National League West Division title, the first National League West Division title ever. And then they face the New York Mets in the National League Championship Series. The Mets swept the Braves that year. Obviously, this was the Miracle Mets team, but if you look at it rationally, that Braves team and this Astros team likely both better than that New York Mets team, especially the rotation. Remember, it's 3 out of 5 series. Durker, Wilson, Cuellar, Ryan, Richard. You're not getting a break from those 3 guys. You got to hope to get to their bullpen. And their bullpen, if you get to their closer, you're just as screwed. So the Astros could possibly, very well, likely, win the National League Championship. Win the pennant and go to the World Series, where they would face off against the Baltimore Orioles. Kurt Blefary's old team. And the team that Mike Cuellar was rumored to go to, but in this case, He never does. The New York Mets beat the Baltimore Orioles in 5 games. But remember, this was a Mets team that the Astros have just beaten. So the Astros are better than the Mets at this point. That series may go a little bit longer because both teams are absolutely phenomenal. The Orioles no longer have Mike Cuellar, so they have Jim Palmer and Dave McNally. You got Tom Phoebus, not too far behind, but still. Now the Astros have Mike Cuellar, and now they have Kurt Blefrey still. So, that's a dogfight of a World Series. I'm going to let you decide who wins that World Series. You let me know in the comments below. That would have been a classic. So, I'll read the new starting lineup and new starting rotation again. Batting first at second base, number 8, Joe Morgan. Batting second in right field, number 10, Rusty Staub. Batting third in center field, number 24, Jimmy Wynn. Batting fourth in left field, number 27, Bob Watson. Batting fifth at first base, number 17, Don Clendenin. Batting sixth at third base, number 12, Doug Rader. Batting seventh at shortstop, number 11, Dennis Menke. Batting eighth, the catcher, number 7, Johnny Edwards. Batting ninth, the pitcher's slot, which could consist of any of the following in the starting rotation. Ace, right-hander, number 49, Larry Dierker. Number 2, right-hander, number 40, Don Wilson. Third, left-hander, number 35, Mike Cuellar. Fourth, right-hander, number 30, Nolan Ryan. And fifth, right-hander, number 50, J.R. Richard. In the bullpen, Wade Blasingame, Dooley Womack or Jim Bouton, and Fred Gladding, just to name a few. Especially if they wear these uniforms right here. 1969 Houston Astros. What could have been? Let me know what you think.